So after the Maimer, so they say here that he spoke. And I'll give you a kitzur of it. He spoke. This is a long niglisich in the Yidnat B'Chsidus about the difference, analyzing the psukim as to what exactly did Mordechai and Esther together and individually request of the Sanhedrin. So the Rebbe analyzes the psukim and analyzes also the difference, the way it's recorded in Bavli and Yerushalmi. So here I'm going to give you just a kitzur of the main body of the Sichot regarding the Fabdangan. So I'll share it with you. You have to halt cup. It's a little bit nigler, not complicated, but. So the Al Gemara says like this. The Gemara Megillah says this is Bavli. So this is not in your text. Esther sent a message to the Chachamim with the request, Kivuni L'doides. Please establish me unto all generations. What exactly is she asking? Rashi says she wanted Purim to be a Yom Tov and a day of reading, to read the miracle. Liyos li Lishem, to have my name should be perpetuated. Then the Gemara continues. She sent a second letter. Esther sends a second letter to the Chachamim, Kisvuni L'doides. Write me unto generations. Meaning the request is that the Megillah should be part of Tanakh. That's how it's recorded in Bavli. The Rishalmi has a slightly different version. Mordechai and Esther, note that the Bavli didn't mention Mordechai. The Rishalmi mentions Mordechai and Esther, and they wrote a letter and they sent it to Rabbi Seinu, to the Sanhedrin, and they said to them, do you accept our request that these days should be established every year, these 2 days of the 14th to the 15th of Adar? Okay, so again, the Bavli says Esther sends, and there's 2 requests. First of all, establish me, and then the day of Kriya, the story should be told. She sent a second request that Megillah be part of Tanakh. The Rishalmi relates the narrative as Mordechai and Esther sending a letter that these days should be accepted as Yom Tov. We have to understand why in the request as recorded in the Yerushalmi, it mentions Mordechai and Esther, and in Bavli only Esther. And it would be a forced answer to suggest that they're arguing about what actually happened. That would be a very unsatisfactory answer. They're just arguing about the Metzias. Especially since, according to certain texts, the author of the statement in Bavli is the same one as the Yerushalmi. Look up the Gemara. So that makes it even more tenuous to say that they are actually arguing about what happened. So the Rebbe says characteristically that they are not arguing, even though they have the different description of the events, and that's because the Bavli is talking about primarily with respect to the request of the reading of the Megillah. Now that came in 2 stages, the Bavli is telling us. First, Esther asked Kivuni, the story should be told. It should be Yom Tov, and the story should be told. But doesn't have to be from the Ksav. Then came from her a second request, Kisvuni L'doides, that it should be written and be incorporated and canonized, as it were, in the Sifrei Kodesh, and that the reading should be Mitoich HaKsav, from the writ. And to read it, to tell the story by heart, one would not be Yoitze. That was the second request. All of this is Esther alone. So in summary, what's Esther asking in 2 stages? 1, the days be established, obviously. 2, the story should be told. That's all request number 1. the story should be told. Request number 2.
Not enough to hear it, to actually.
The Megillah should be part of Tanakh. It's 2 parts. The Megillah should be incorporated as part of Ksuvim, and that you're not yotze to just tell the story, but you must read it from the Megillah. That is what the Bavli is recording. The Rishalmi tells another part of the story, and that is a different request, not about the story being told or the Megillah being incorporated part of Tanakh, but rather the Rishalmi is talking about the request that Purim be a Yom Tov, days of Mishta v'Simcha. If you look at the words of the Rishalmi again, the request was to the Sanhedrin, Mekablim atem aleichem shnei yom halol b'chol shana. Do you accept these 2 days to be established as a perpetual Yom Tov? That was asked by both. So it comes out that Mordechai did not join Esther in the request that the story be told and not that the Megillah be part of Tanakh. That was Esther's singular request. He joined with Esther in one, and she with him in what? That it should be established as a Yom Tov. If he was going to say it over here, I don't know, but actually Mordechai wanted as a Yom Tov Mamish of Isser Malacha, which they did not accept. This time it'll come out here. So if we with this
I thought it was part of Sanhedrin.
Oh, so that's true. The Rebbe addresses that in another Sichah, so that he wore 2 hats. There's Mordechai is Mitzad Klal Yisrael, representing Klal Yisrael, having a request, and then going on the other side of the bench and evaluating it as a member of the Sanhedrin. So he played 2 roles.
Also, then he leaves Sanhedrin to be part of
Later.
Achashverosh's.
After. Yeah. He didn't lead the Sanhedrin. They left him.
Right, they ditched him. They abandoned
Yeah, they left him. At any rate, having said what we said now, that the different requests will understand the diuk and the psukim. And that is, first it says, when the Megillah describes how the days have been established, Purim has been established, it says, L'kayim yisimeya Purim ha'ela bizmaneyem, to fulfill the days of Purim in their times, kashikim alim Mordechai Yehudi ve'Esther HaMalka, as Mordechai Yehudi and Esther the Malka established. Note, it mentions both of them. In what context? Yimei Purim ha'ela, that these days be days of Yom Tov. Then the pasuk goes on to say, U'maimer Esther kiyam divrei Purim ha'ela v'nichta b'sefer. And the words of Esther were fulfilled with respect to the words of Purim and written in the Sefer. And what do you notice here? Only Esther. It's a Meredith Kabir that explains Pashtus Aksuvim. So we see our explanation is reflected and borne out by the Psukim, our reconciliation of the Bavli and Yerushalmi, that they're not arguing, but rather relating different parts of the story or different requests. And that's reflected in the Psukim just quoted. The first pasuk talks about the takana that Purim should be a Yom Tov, and that mentions Mordechai and Esther. The second pasuk is talking about the reading Divrei, number 1, that word appears in the second request, and V'nichtav b'sefer, that it should be written. And therefore it says Maimer Esther, for she alone requested it. Now we have to understand why the requests were different. Why didn't they request everything uniformly, or what's what I'm looking for? Huh? Together, what is the word for it?
Cohesive.
Unilaterally.
Oh, I don't want you there. Well, there's one unit, yeah. Okay, so the answer is because this reflects their different contributions in Pu'ula in the story of Purim. Mordechai's Pu'ula, Mordechai's Avodah, Mordechai's work to nullify Haman's Gezeda was primarily in the spiritual realm, to arouse Eden to do tshuva. Esther is the one that actualizes the salvation of B'Peil Mamish through entreating Achashverosh as related at length. Oh, and that's why Taka Mordechai wanted that the day should be forbidden b'melacha, purely spiritual days, because that was his inyan. He aroused the Eden to tshuva. So he wanted the celebration to be a spiritual celebration, more spiritual, purely yontif, isa b'melacha. So that explains, therefore, continuing our idea, this explains how the miracle of Purim should be observed, how it should be remembered and observed. Through the fulfillment of the mitzvahs of Purim, food and drink, and sending shalach manos, matanas avyonim. Now, if you look at what the person is doing, you don't know this is connected with Purim. So where is the Purim component? The person's intent. It's not just I'm stuck, and not just I'm giving food to his neighbor, but because of Purim. So these activities are the zichron, remembering the miracle where in our mind, in our heart. At the reading of the Megillah, and especially reading it from a physical scroll. So here the telling, the celebrating of the miracle is not through something else which we attach significance to, but rather these words, these actions. That's Purim. Here's the story written on ink on a parchment, right? You're following? It's tangible. That's tangible Purim. And therefore, by Mordechai, for him it was enough to request just the mitzvahs of Purim and the ruchnius of Purim, which all are fulfilled by intent and awareness and significance that we attach to the food and drink, because that was his role, mind and heart. Esther, no, her role was the Peil Mamish, as she wants, and she's successful in her request that the Purim be celebrated not through attaching significance to an otherwise act that has independent value, but rather the Megillah exclusively. Here's the story told, and moreover written on a parchment, and only that you're yoitze with the physical Megillah that tells the story. Having said that, now you go back to the Sichot. Let's go back to the Sichot and read the Fabrengen. First, I give us a little bit of a summary, so it's worth hearing. So you're going to follow along as I translate. You got it, kizvuni. So they write, our editors, in chapter 30. The Rebbe spoke about the differences in the Ksuvim, the Gemara. First of all, the Ksuvim. We just pointed out the differences in the Ksuvim. The first request mentions Mordechai and Esther, the second one Esther alone, and also Bavli Yerushalmi, as we just related, with respect to establishing the days of Purim for generations. And that is the decree of the Yom Tov that was effected through Mordechai and Esther, whereas establishing the reading of the Megillah and the writing of it was effected only through Esther alone. Now, this is based, this is not what I shared with you. This is more detail. This is based on the words of the Gemara. The Gemara says, why is Esther compared to the Shachar, to the morning? Where do we see that she's compared? So on footnote 143 explains. The Gemara Megillah is, I'm just going to read in English and we'll translate. The Gemara Megillah, footnote 143. Just by Hora 141. This is all from the Fabrengen, so we'll do Hora 141. So Hora 141, he says that these three things are the main mitzvahs, general things of Purim. What three things?
141 is just a source. Not 40.
So you have different than me. Starts with Shahim Gimel in Yonim.
140.
Yeah, okay. That means that they added another order. I have a later edition then. Yeah, so we just said now that Purim, the request, it should be a Yom Tov and Kriya and Ksiva. We should tell this story and the Megillah be written as part of the Megillah. So these are the three general inyanim, but then it's in addition to the detailed mitzvahs, as the Achronim enumerate, that there are actually 7 mitzvahs on Purim. Can you figure them out? It's not so. I'll tell you the 7 mitzvahs. They are Megillah, 1, Kriyas HaTorah, 2, Purim morning, 3, Ala Nisim in davening and benching, 4, prohibition of a tainus and eulogy, fasting and eulogy, 5, Simcha or Misha Lipsume, the Simcha to the extent of Lipsume, 6, Mishleach Monis, and 7, Matanas Evyonin. That's Beprotius. But in general, is what we just said now. Now, again, so the whole explanation we gave is based on the Gemara that Esther is compared to the Shachar. What's the story there? So the Gemara says in Megillah that when Esther approached the king, and she stood in the inner chamber, so as soon as she got to the place where all the idols were, she said that the Shekhinah departed from her. Imagine she's always felt the Shekhinah's presence. And it departed from her, and she said, Keli, Keli, Lama Zaftani. This is capital Chav Beis. My God, why have you forsaken me? And he says it where it is. So Esther said this capital. So David HaMelech is writing this in the way of Nevuah, obviously, right? So it's understood that the beginning of the capital, Lam Natseach ala Yalas HaShachar. Now, what does it mean, Yalas HaShachar? Some Mefarshim say just it's the name of an instrument. But the Gemara says it's the morning hind, the morning deer. I guess it's called the morning deer because it appears in the morning. And the Gemara gives many explanations why she's compared to a deer, a hind, Hind. So that's how the capital begins. So it's obvious that since the Gemara says, Keli, Keli, Lama Zaftani was said by Esther, so the beginning of the capital, which is a composition, al, by, or on, Ayelas HaShachar, who is that? That's Esther. So now, the word Shachar means morning or dawn. So why is she compared to the dawn? Loi Malach. I'm saying in English. So the Gemara says, this is the Gemara now in Yoma, that just like the dawn is the end of the night, so to Esther is the last of all the Nisim. The last of all the Nisim to be recorded in part of Tanakh. So this was Esther's request. Why? Because the difference between, as we just said before a little bit, there's more elaboration now. The difference between Mordechai and Esther, that she is the one that piles what? That the Megillah be part of Torah, and it comes at the end, Seif Kol Anisim, and it's connected symbolically with the end of the night, right? Clear all the associations. Why her only? Because Mordechai, his effort with respect to Yidden was on a spiritual plane, but Esther's effort and work was in the Beis HaMalchus on a physical level. So that's why she's the end of its night. He's Oyer, she's dealing with the Cheshach. This is the whole Maimer of Esther Hadassah. So the whole Esther Hadassah. So she brings it down in the hand of Esther in Gashmi Kipshuta, a physical Megillah. And that's the difference in Madregi, adds in brackets. Mordechai is Yisayid Abba, he's Chochma, and Esther is Malchus. In other words, Oiris and Kalim. And therefore, Esther put effort that Purim should be not in just Purim be observed not only in a way that we remember only in a machshava, but it should come into speech. She's the one that said, tell the story. And then she went even further. The story's got to be written. Why? Because that's the madrega. She's the end of the night, the end of Ishtalshalus, the end of all of the levels of the world. Olam Asiyah, Seif Kol Halayla, she's the end of the night. And there, in the Hester, she illuminates Sihadas. And they tell us that this was edited by the Rebbe, this Sichah, which we only learned, by the way, we didn't go into all of the whole pilpul, and printed look at the Sichas Chelik Design, which we just gave a summary of. Now let's look in Ha'ara 144. It's very beautiful. Like the general distinction between men and women, al pi Torah. Like the Gemara says in Yevamis that the man brings in the wheat. But does he grind it? Who has any benefit from the wheat? And she takes the wheat and she turns it into bread. So thereby she illuminates his eyes. To see exactly the quote there in Yevamis. Meaning that her effect in the world is to take the wheat and make it something fitting to eat, to sustain and nourish, and the actual elevation of the world, B'Peil Mamish, happens through the woman. You follow? She's the hands-on one that affects the transformation of the Gashmis of Ilam Hazeh. She turns the bias, the home, into a Didele Yisbarach. Her own home and the world at large. In the bigger picture that continues in the Ha'ara, and again, this was all said at the Fabrengen. As it's known that the neshama and the guf parallel ish ve'isha. Now, we don't mean here that the guf is the ish is exclusive to the guf. We mean the ha'or of the neshama that comes into the guf, malchus. So what's in the neshama? Neshama is drawn, as the pasuk says, ruach b'nei adam va'elehi lamayla. The spirit of man is drawn upwards. So the neshama is drawn upwards. Ruchni to the mitzvahs. What's the guf? And Rebbe adds the nefesh, which is connected to the guf. The guf is merely a guf, but it's it's the soul that animates it. That is, and which includes even the nefesh habamis, that is descending, and that's her shlichus, and that's the whole avodah and the whole purpose of creation. Is not in the aliyah, but in the yerida, in the neshama and the guf, and in transforming the nefesh habamis and the physical world and making it a dir Yisbarach. And therefore, Esther is the culmination of it all. That's why it's called Megillas. By the way, this is why it's called Megillas Esther, not Megillas Mordechai. He didn't even request it should be written. And it all points to the critical role of Jewish women, the end of Golos in the final transformation of the world and conquering the enemy as women do, not by defeating, but by transforming the enemy into an ally. That's the ultimate victory. That's the ultimate Pada B'Shalom Nafshi. And that's the woman who's the nurturer. He's the warrior, but she's the nurturer. So a warrior is good till the next battle. But if you nurture and you develop and you find the hidden godliness even in your enemy, then you got peace forever. That's Gola. And that's all the feminine inyan, and that's what Chassidus is, the feminine dimension of Torah, etc. Okay, I'm just waiting for the guys to maybe have they shot up already. They come already. We'll continue. Otherwise,
They're not. Nobody's here.
okay,
Let's
so
continue.
Keep on going. Out of 145. So he said, can hear Ronnie walking in. He said, so she wanted Esther that it should be not only the story told, but in action, written from a scroll. So this is reflected in the words of the pasuk, that these days are not just niskorim, remembered, but nasim, actualized. And the actualization, the physical, tangible actualization of it all is the physical Megillah that Esther is responsible for. Ara 146. And the Megillah is written in such a way, he adds here, that when Mashiach will come, when all of the works of the Nevi'im and Ksuvim will no longer be relevant, Megillah Esther remains forever. As the pasuk says, that these words will never pass away and never end from their children forever. I'll go again, pointing to that what Esther achieves is Geula, redemption, and hence her Megillah is forever, because this is what redemption is. This is what Mashiach is. 147. 147. Ronnie will wait for somebody else to show, and then we'll shift gears.
Thank you.
You wake up like a rocket out of bed.
Same as you.
Weiß nicht.
That's good.
So Esther is called the end of the night. Again, Ayeles HaShachar, because she comes. She's the last of all of the miracles to be recorded. So this idea of being the last is reflected also, as we said before, that this is also manifested in the neshama that comes into the guf. So the Rebbe is saying here that in the body, in Nefesh Habahamis, there are many levels, one lower than the other. It's not enough, he's saying, to affect the higher levels of our animal instinct. Not enough. We have to pearl not just on the levels of the guf and Nefesh Habahamis, as they are close to and inclined towards receiving inspiration from the neshama. That's the higher levels of the Nefesh Habahamis. It's the Edelkeit. Even the animal soul of a Jew is an Edel creature. We're not by nature coarse. But that's the higher part. That's close to the godly soul. And it's almost an intermediary between the godly soul and our lower instincts and urges. But it's the lower instincts, that has to be elevated. The Sof HaLayla. The higher parts of the animal soul, that's called the beginning of the night. Still close to the day, not the end. But we have to affect, the Rebbe says, the tikkun, even the madreg achi achrein, the lowest nadir of our lives, the darkest places, the darkest corners, there we have to go and illuminate and fix it. That's what Purim is telling us. Okay? So we'll conclude that we can actually continue, because this will be for everybody. We'll just finish the Sikha here. And this is the general lesson. We're reading from a Fabrengen of 1964. That the main avodah has to be not just in a spiritual plane, it's got to come down tangibly in action. And in such a way, we conquer our body and our animal soul, because it's in action that they participate in the mitzvah, not just in thought that leaves the body out of it. And even speech, it's in action, but doesn't really engage the body. But physical action, that engages the body. That's what Purim is all about, and that's where it needs to go. And this is reflected in the Medrash, Rabbi on Esther, about many things that have to be in a great way, but not small. He lists a whole lot of things and concludes, and what has to be a lot? You need a lot of bracha and a lot of shalom. A lot of peace. And then we affect this should be oida v'simcha v'sas and v'kor in a way that we can see with our physical eyes, and kain tiyalonu, and all that everyone needs, minefesh ad basa, spiritually and physically. Okay.